Top 12 Mysterious Cases That Still Remain Unsolved. Number 12. The Severed Feet Mystery. In 2007, a girl was walking along a beach in British Columbia when she found a sneaker that had washed up on shore. To her horror, she found that a human foot was inside. Since then, a number of severed feet have washed ashore since then. The feet have been connected to 5 men, 1 a woman, and 3 of unknown sex. Throughout the years, the case still remains a mystery, with many theories floating around the general public and the media as to who the feet belonged to. The Vancouver police managed to identify 1 foot in 2008, matching its DNA to a man who was described as suicidal. The authorities were then able to match 2 other found feet to a woman who was also believed to have committed suicide. Because of these findings, many speculate that the feet belonged to those who jumped off a bridge to their deaths. However, because of the rarity of only feet and no other body parts showing up, some believe they were those of the victims of the tsunami in 2004, since the make of the shoes has been all manufactured before 2004. Whatever the source these feet are coming from, they have left the world, and authorities, stumped. Number 11. The Leatherman. The Leatherman was a particular vagabond who was famous for wearing his handmade leather clothes and traveled an annual route between the Connecticut River and the Hudson River, roughly from 1857 to 1889. His repeating voyage took him to certain towns in western Connecticut and eastern New York, and he would return to each town every 34 to 36 days, living in rock shelters. He stopped at towns along his 365-mile loop for food and supplies. It was unclear what he did for work. One shopkeeper kept a record of his usual store order: 1 loaf of bread, a can of sardines, 1 pound of fancy crackers, a pie, 2 quarts of coffee, 1 gill of brandy in a bottle of beer. An article from the Burlington Free Press, dating to April 7, 1870, refers to him as the leather-clad man, and states that he rarely spoke and when people addressed him would simply speak in monosyllables. According to rumors, he was from Picardy, France. Even though he was fluent in French, he communicated mostly with grunts and gestures, rarely using the little English that he knew. When asked about his background, he would abruptly end the conversation. Even upon his death from cancer in 1889, the Leatherman's true identity remained unknown and is still a mystery to this day. Number 10. The murder of Betty Shanks. On September 19, 1952, 22-year-old Betty Shanks got off the train at Days Road Terminus in Grange, which is a suburb of Brisbane, Queensland in Australia. She was attending classes at the University of Queensland, and after she got off the train, started her short walk home. However, she would never arrive. Her violently beaten body was found on the corner of Carberry and Thomas Streets in the garden of a house the next morning at 5:35 a.m. by a policeman who lived nearby. At the time, it became one of Queensland's most notorious investigations ever. Despite many theories, a suspect was never convicted and her murder is still unsolved. There are many books written by authors speculating who did it, and many have come forward and confessed, but all of them have proven to be false. As of today, there is still a $50,000 AUS reward. Number 9. The disappearance of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse Keepers. The Flannan Isles is a group of rocky, uninhabited islands off the western coast of Scotland. The islands are best known to be adored by sheep, and shepherds often sail their flock there to graze. Sheep that grazed on the Flannan Isles were believed to give birth to twins or recover from illness. Despite it being a paradise for the woolly critters, rumors of a haunted spirit have prevented shepherds from ever staying overnight. Around midnight on December 15, the steamship Archtor passed by the Isles. Captain Holman noticed he could not see the light from the lighthouse, even though the conditions should have allowed him to. When the Archtor arrived in port, they reported the light's absence, even though this was never communicated to the Northern Lighthouse Board. On December 26, the lighthouse tender ship, Hesperus, made a routine visit to Eilean Moor. When nearing the island, Captain James Harvey found it odd that the Scottish flag had been removed from the flagpole. He then sounded the horn to get the attention of the 3 lighthouse keepers, but there was no response. They then attempted firing a flare, but again, no response. Joseph Moore was on board the Hesperus, and with no signal coming from the island, he was sent ashore. Upon arriving at Eilean Moor East Landing, nothing appeared amiss and everything seemed normal just as he had left it. He went up the island to find the entrance gate, the entrance door, and the door after that all shut. However, the kitchen door was found open and it was discovered that the fire had not been lit for several days. All of the clocks were stopped. I then entered the rooms in succession, Moore reported. I found the beds empty just as they had left them in the early morning. The bodies of the 3 men were never found and their disappearance still remains a mystery to this day. Number 8. The Eerie Lady of the Dunes. On July 26, 1974, 12-year-old Leslie Metcalf was returning from the beach with her family in Provincetown, Massachusetts. A local dog had followed them, and when it took off barking, Leslie broke away from her parents and started to go after it. In the dunes of Race Point Beach, a mile east of a ranger station, Leslie found the decomposing body of a naked woman. The woman was 5 inch 6 foot, weighed about 145 pounds, and was between 20 and 40 years old. She was lying on one side of a beach towel, with her head resting on a pair of jeans and a blue bandana. It was estimated that the body had been lying there from 10 days to 3 weeks before being discovered. The left side of her head was crushed and she had almost been completely decapitated. While no weapons were found, it was believed that a military entrenching tool was used to almost cut off the head. Her hands, though, were removed to conceal the identity through fingerprints. Due to the horrific state of the body, authorities believed that the woman was murdered. With no sign of struggle at the time, authorities believed that the unidentified victim would have known her murderer. The only signs of evidence were the size, 10 footprints that indicated a heavy person running away. Provincetown Police Chief Jimmy Meade said that the killer likely drove the victim to the dune in a 4-wheel-drive sand vehicle to sunbathe, despite using bloodhounds, missing person bulletins, scourging the registers of local lodgings, and looking into anyone who had a permit to bring their vehicle onto the beach. Police turned up nothing. In 2019, Provincetown local Margie Childs reflected on the case, saying, "The fact that no one could identify the Lady of the Dunes in the tight-knit community was very strange." Almost 50 years later, the victim known as the Lady of the Dunes is still unidentified. Number 7. The Unexplained Phoenix Lights. On March 13, 1997, a string of 5 lights in AV formation appeared in the sky above Phoenix, Arizona. The National UFO Reporting Center reported that the first call about the lights came in at around 8:16 p.m. from a retired police officer in Paulden, Arizona, which is about 2 hours north of Phoenix. After that, the National UFO Reporting Center began to receive a slew of calls south of Paulden, suggesting that the lights were moving in a southeastern direction. Allegedly, there were over 700 witnesses who had seen the lights, including pilots, police officers, and military officials who lit up the National UFO Reporting Center switchboard, demanding explanations. Some described the lights as orbs, others said triangles. However, a large number of witnesses described the lights as part of a singular massive craft that made no noise. Around 10 p.m., a second set of as many as 9 lights appeared in the sky. A laser printer technician, Dana Valentine, claimed to have witnessed the craft from his yard in Phoenix. "We could see the outline of the mass behind the lights, but you couldn't actually see the mass," he reported. "It was more like a gray distortion of the night sky, wavy. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know it's not a technology the public has heard before." Air traffic controllers could not see the lights on the radar, despite seeing them in the sky with their own eyes. Frances Barwood, the 1997 Phoenix City Councilwoman who launched an investigation into the event, said that of the over 700 witnesses she interviewed, the government never interviewed even one. To this day, the unexplained Phoenix lights remain a mystery. Number 6. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappearance. On March 8, 2014, while flying from Malaysia to China, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 passengers and crew members vanished into thin air. The global search effort, the largest in aviation history, only turned up a mere 20 pieces of aircraft debris. However, the Prime Minister of Malaysia has declined to comment other than to say that the aircraft disappeared over the Indian Ocean. The lack of closure has propelled multiple theories, including a hijacking, a United States capture, a crew suicide. It was reported later that the pilot was having marital problems, a fire aboard the aircraft, vertical entry into the ocean, a meteor strike, and even an alien abduction. Despite the passage of time and the $160 million spent scouring thousands of square miles of ocean, the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 and the fate of the 239 people aboard remains a mystery. Number 5. The mystery of Overtown Bridge. In Scotland, there lies a bridge called Leashes. Number 4. The O.J. Simpson case. The timeline surrounding the murders is as follows. On June 12, at 6:30 p.m. Nicole, her children, and others arrive at the restaurant called Mezzaluna. At 9:15 p.m. the same night, her sister called the restaurant to say that her mother had left her glasses there. Ronald Goldman goes to pick up the glasses. At 9 to 9:30 p.m., O.J. Simpson and his friend Brian Cato Kalin head to a nearby McDonald's for dinner. At 9:45, they return home from McDonald's. Cato was staying at O.J.'s guest house at that time. At 9:48 to 9:50, Goldman leaves Mezzaluna with a white envelope containing the glasses. At 10:15, Nicole's neighbor hears a dog bark and cry while he is watching TV. Prosecutors then theorize that these barks signalize the murder of the dog's owner, Nicole. At 11:45, O.J. departs on his flight, and at 12:10 a.m. the next morning, the bodies of Nicole and Ronald Goldman are discovered. Evidence found at the crime scene included a blood-stained glove, a knitted hat, and a bloodied footprint. When O.J. landed in Chicago, he was contacted by Detective Ron Phillips and told that his ex-wife had died. Upon hearing the news, O.J. asked, "Who killed her?" O.J. was then questioned and charged with 2 counts of murder and was declared a fugitive. The high-speed chase involving police and O.J.'s white Ford Bronco has been a lasting memory for anyone involved with the case. During the chase, O.J. was sitting in the passenger seat and the car was being driven by his friend, Al Cowlings. Cowlings reported that he didn't stop because O.J. was holding a gun to his head and that O.J. was suicidal. What followed was one of the most publicized trials in U.S. history. The verdict was released on October 3, 1995, and O.J. Simpson was acquitted. To this day, no other suspects have been questioned and the murders remain unsolved. Number 3. The disappearance of Dorothy Arnold. Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold was a wealthy New York socialite. She was the daughter of perfume importer Francis Rose Arnold and his wife Mary Martha Parks Arnold. As far as anyone knew, she had a happy home life. On the morning of December 12, 1910, she left her home on the Upper East Side of Manhattan and told her mother that she was headed downtown to buy an evening dress. According to the New York Times, when her mother asked if she could accompany her daughter, Dorothy said, "No. When I find the gown I want, I will telephone you and you can come down and see it." When she left the house, she had over $30 in her pocket. On her way down Fifth Avenue, she stopped at a grocery store on 59th Street to buy some chocolate, then at a bookstore on 27th Street where she bought a copy of Engaged Girl Sketches, the slightly humorous collection of short romantic stories. Around the time when she bought the book, she ran into a friend from college, Gladys King. The two talked about a party that they had both been invited to, the same party that Dorothy was buying a dress for. Gladys left to meet her mother for lunch and Dorothy was never seen again. Francis Arnold was reluctant to gain publicity over his daughter's disappearance, and initially employed the help of private investigators. After those attempts were unsuccessful, the family filed a missing person report with the New York City Police Department in January 1911. Various theories, sightings, and rumors regarding Arnold's disappearance circulated in the years and decades after she was last seen, but the circumstances surrounding her disappearance have never been resolved and her fate remains unknown. Number 2. The Shark Arm Murders. In early 1935, Coogee Aquarium and swimming baths in Sydney, Australia were floundering. The world was in the middle of the Great Depression and the aquarium's owner, Bert Hobson, needed something to attract customers. His spirits were lifted when he and his son caught a 14-foot, 1-ton tiger shark off the coast and put it in their pool. There had been numerous shark attacks in the area and Hobson thought it was the perfect thing to save his business, about a week after catching the shark and in front of crowds of families. The shark began to convulse and vomit, spitting up a rat, a bird, and a human arm. Hobson called the police and they fished out the arm, which had a tattoo of 2 boxers fighting, which was located inside the forearm. The shark was killed and the stomach was cut open to look for any other remains, but none were found. Using new fingerprint technology, they were able to identify the arm's original operator to 45-year-old Jimmy Smith. He had been missing since April 7, 1935. Smith was last seen drinking and playing cards with Patrick Francis Brady at the Cecil Hotel in southern Sydney after telling his wife he was going fishing. Brady had rented a small cottage at the time Smith went missing. Police alleged that Smith was murdered at this cottage. Port Hacking and Gunnamatta Bay were searched by the Australian Navy and the Air Force, but the rest of Smith's body was never found. Number 1. The 8-Day Bride. On May 20, 1947, the body of 22-year-old Christina Kettlewell was found 150 feet away from her honeymoon cottage, in just 9 inches of water on the banks of a river in Severn Falls, Ontario. Just 8 days prior, on May 12, Christina had eloped with 26-year-old war veteran, John Ray Jack Kettlewell, after knowing each other for 3 years. Christina's family had a concern about the marriage. Jack had a friend named Ronald Berry who was a 28-year-old immigrant from Italy who was a professional ballroom dancer. It was reported that Jack, Christina, and Ronald spent an inordinate amount of time together. Christina's family even thought that Ronald was in love with Christina. Ronald returned to the cabin to find a disorientated Jack sitting in the cabin with an apparent head injury and pulled him out of the flames. It was then reported he looked for Christina, but couldn't find her anywhere in the cottage. Ronald then said that the cottage burned down in just an hour. He then took Jack into the boat back to the mainland of Severn Falls, took his friend to the hospital, and then contacted the police. It was then that the situation became worse. Later, Christina's body was found by an owner of a boathouse in the area. Her body was free from burns or any signs of violence. An autopsy found traces of codeine in her stomach, but her ultimate cause of death was declared a drowning. Interestingly enough, Major Lawrence Scarterfield, who acted as a first responder to the fire, reported that he saw no signs of Christina's body in the area when he went to go get water to help extinguish the flames from the house just hours earlier. Jack, Ronald, and 20 other people were questioned by police, and despite possible theories, including that Christina committed suicide, this case remains unsolved.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and wish to see more, click the subscribe button alongside with the notification bell. You can also like the video and comment to let us know about your thought on this case, as well as if you want us to cover any other one.